Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his face as he worked deep inside the moon's surface. The air in the tunnel was thick and warm, even with the machines pushing fresh air down from above. He had been digging in this spot for 3 months now, looking for old things buried in the rock. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa Carter called out from deeper in the tunnel. Her voice sounded strange, like she was scared and excited at the same time. Jake picked up his tools and walked toward her voice. The tunnel was narrow and dark, lit only by small lights they had put on the walls. He had to bend down to avoid. Hitting his head on the low ceiling, Lisa stood in front of a wall that looked different from the rest. Instead of gray moon rock, this wall was smooth and black like glass. Strange blue lines ran through it, glowing softly in the darkness. "What is it?" Jake asked, moving closer to get a better look. "I don't know," Lisa said, "but it's not natural. Someone made this thing." Jake ran his hand along the smooth surface. It was warm to the touch, which was strange because everything else in the tunnel was cold. The blue lines seemed to move under his fingers, flowing like water. "How old do you think it is?" he asked. Lisa checked her computer screen. The rock around it is millions of years old. This thing has been here since before humans existed. Jake felt his heart beat faster. In all his years of digging up old things, he had never found anything like this. He pressed both hands against the wall and felt it vibrate slightly, like it was a live dot above them on Luna Base. Admiral Ben Torres was having a bad day. Reports were coming in about alien ships moving closer to Earth's solar system. The Galactic Coalition said they were just passing through, but Ben didn't trust them. "Sir," his aide said, walking into his office, "we're getting strange readings. From the dig site, some kind of energy signature." Ben looked at the numbers on his screen. They didn't make sense. The energy levels were higher than anything humans had ever created. "Get me Morrison on the radio," he said. Back in the tunnel, Jake's radio crackled to life. "Morrison, this is Admiral Torres. What's your status down there?" "We found something, sir," Jake said. "Some kind of structure built into the moon's rock. It's old, really old." "How old?" Jake looked at Lisa, who held up her computer. "Millions of years, sir. Way before humans." There was silence on the radio for a long moment. Then Torres spoke again. "Stay where you are. Don't touch anything else. I'm sending a team down." But Jake was already touching the wall again. The blue lines were getting brighter, and he could feel warmth spreading through his hands. Something was happening. "Jake, look at this," Lisa said, pointing her light at the ceiling above them. More blue lines were appearing, spreading across the rock like roots growing from a tree. They pulsed with light, getting brighter and brighter out suddenly. The wall in front of Jake's split open with a sound like breaking glass. Cool air rushed out, carrying a smell like rain and flowers. Beyond the opening was a room filled with soft blue light. "We should wait for the Admiral's team," Lisa said, but Jake was already stepping through the opening. The room was huge, much bigger than seemed possible inside the moon. The walls curved up and away, covered in the same blue lines. That now pulsed like a heartbeat. In the center of the room stood a crystal as tall as a person, clear as glass, but filled with swirling light. "Jake, get out of there," Lisa called, but she followed him into the room anyway. As they walked closer to the crystal, it began to glow brighter. The light wasn't harsh like electric lights, but warm and welcoming. Jake felt drawn to it, like it was calling to him. "Don't touch it," Lisa warned, but Jake was already reaching out. The moment his fingers touched the crystal, everything changed. Light exploded through the room, not painful, but overwhelming. Jake saw images flash through his mind. Stars, planets, ships flying through space, and creatures he had never seen before. He saw battles fought among the stars, worlds dying, and something dark moving between the galaxies. The crystal pulsed, once sending a wave of energy racing outward through space. On Luna Base, every computer screen flickered. On Earth, sensitive instruments registered a pulse, unlike anything they had ever detected. But the pulse didn't stop at Earth. It traveled, faster than light, racing across the galaxy, reaching planets and space stations thousands of light years away. On those distant worlds, ancient machines that had been sleeping for millions of years suddenly woke up. Lights began blinking on control panels that no living being had seen active before dot in the council chambers of the Galactic Coalition. Emergency. Alarms began to sound. Alien leaders who had lived for centuries felt a chill of fear they hadn't experienced since childhood stories of ancient horrors. "The Guardian wakes," whispered an old Zephyrian diplomat, his blue skin turning pale. "After all these years, the Guardian of Earth wakes." On a ship near Earth's solar system, Captain Nora Walsh felt her vessel shudder as the pulse passed through it. Her instruments were going crazy, showing energy readings that couldn't be real. "Captain," her science officer called out, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the moon. Whatever just happened, it was big." Jake pulled his hand back from the crystal, breathing hard. The room was still glowing, but softer now. Lisa was staring at him with wide eyes. "What did you do?" she asked. "I don't know," Jake said, but that wasn't entirely true. Somehow, he did know. The crystal had shown him things, told him things. Earth wasn't just humanity's home. It was something much more important. "We need to call Admiral Torres," Lisa said, but Jake knew it was too late for that. Whatever had just happened, there was no taking it back. He looked at the crystal, still glowing softly, and felt a weight settle on his shoulders. Something was coming. 3 days after Jake touched the crystal, ships began arriving. Not human ships, but alien ones from the Galactic Coalition. They came in silence, taking positions around Earth's solar system like they owned it. Admiral Ben Torres stood in the command center on Luna Base, watching the screens that showed more ships arriving every hour. His hands were tight fists at his sides. "How many now?" he asked. 47 ships, sir," his aide replied. "More coming in from the outer system." Ben had never seen so many alien ships in one place. For 300 years, the Coalition had kept humans trapped in their own solar system, saying they were too dangerous to join the galactic community. Now they were here in force, and Ben didn't think they came to welcome humanity. Down in the crystal chamber, Jake sat on the floor with his back against the wall. He hadn't slept much since touching the crystal. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the images it had shown him. Vast ships moving between stars, worlds burning, and something dark hunting in the space between galaxies. Dr. Amy Brooks arrived from Earth that morning, her gray hair messy from the quick trip up. She was the best historian humanity had when it came to alien civilizations. "Show me everything," she said to Jake and Lisa. They led her to the crystal, which was still glowing softly. Amy walked around it slowly, taking pictures and making notes. "The symbols on the walls," she said, pointing to the blue lines that covered the room. "I've seen similar ones in old alien ruins, but these are much older than anything we found before." Jake touched the crystal again, and the room filled with light. This time, the images were clearer. Amy gasped as she saw holographic displays, showing star maps and alien writing. "It's a historical record," Amy said, her voice filled with wonder. "This is documenting something that happened millions of years ago." The crystal showed them a galaxy full of life. Thousands of different species lived on countless worlds, trading and exploring together. But then something came from the dark. Spaces between galaxies. The holograms called them the DEVOURERS. Jake watched the images with growing horror. The Devourers didn't just conquer planets. They consumed them completely. Stars went dark. Entire solar systems disappeared. Nothing could stop them. "Look at this," Lisa said, pointing to a new image that appeared. It showed a single ship larger than any they had seen before. It moved through space like a living thing, hunting the Devourers. Wherever it went, the dark creatures died. "The Guardian," Amy whispered, reading the alien text that appeared below the image. One ship stopped them all. The hologram showed the final battle. The Guardian ship faced thousands of Devourers in the space between galaxies. Light exploded outward from the battle, and when it faded, the Devourers were gone. But the Guardian ship was damaged. It limped back to a small solar system on the edge of the galaxy and went to sleep. The system had a young yellow star and several planets, including one covered in water. "Earth," Jake said quietly. "It came to Earth." The images showed the Guardian ship breaking apart, its pieces settling into the planets and moons of the solar system. The main intelligence went to sleep deep inside the third planet, waiting. Waiting for what? Lisa asked. The crystal pulsed and new images appeared. They showed life growing on Earth, evolving from simple creatures to complex ones. But the evolution wasn't random. Something was guiding it, pushing it toward a specific goal. "It was waiting for us," Jake said, understanding flooding through him. "The Guardian influenced human evolution. It made us what we are." Amy was frantically taking notes. "This changes everything we know about human history. We're not just another species that happened to evolve. We're the Guardian's children." On the surface of the moon, Commander Rick Hayes led a team of soldiers through the tunnels toward the crystal chamber. Admiral Torres had ordered them to secure the site, but Rick wasn't sure what they were supposed to protect it from. His radio crackled. "Commander, we have movement on the surface. Alien shuttle coming down." Rick cursed. The Coalition had finally decided to visit in person. The alien shuttle landed near Luna Base, and 3 figures emerged. They wore environmental suits, but Rick could see they weren't human. One was tall and thin with blue skin, a Zephian. The other 2 were shorter and covered in scales. Draknari. "I am Ambassador Krell," the Zephyrian said when they met in the base's main airlock. "We demand immediate access to the artifact you have discovered." "I'm afraid that's not possible," Admiral Torres replied. He had come up from the command center to meet them personally. "This is a human archaeological site on human territory." Ambassador Krell's large eyes narrowed. "You do not understand what you have found. The Guardian artifact is too dangerous for your species to possess." "Our species?" Torres felt his anger rising. "You've kept us locked in our own solar system for 3 centuries, treating us like children. Now you want to take away our discoveries." "2? The Guardian nearly destroyed the galaxy once before," Krell said. "Our ancestors' records are clear. When it awakened to fight the Devourers, it killed billions of innocent beings. Entire species went extinct." Down in the crystal chamber, Jake felt the Guardian's presence in his mind. It wasn't threatening or alien. It felt familiar, like coming home. "That's not true," he said aloud, though only Amy and Lisa could hear him. "What's not true?" Amy asked. "What they're saying about the Guardian. It didn't kill innocent people. It protected them." The crystal pulsed again, showing new images. Jake saw the Guardian ship rescuing survivors from worlds the Devourers had attacked. It had saved millions of lives, not destroyed them. "The Coalition is lying," Jake said. "They're afraid of what the Guardian represents." "What does it represent?" Lisa asked. Jake looked at the crystal, feeling its ancient intelligence reaching out to him. "Change. The Guardian was built to protect the galaxy. But first, it has to wake up completely. And for that to happen, For that to happen what?" Amy pressed. It needs us. Humanity. We're not just its children. We're its hands and eyes in this galaxy. When the Devourers return, and they will return, the Guardian will need us to fight them. Above them, the argument between Admiral Torres and Ambassador Krell was getting heated. We will not leave without the artifact, Krell said. Our fleet has orders to secure it by any means necessary. Your fleet is in human space without permission, Torres replied. That's an act of war. War. Krell laughed, a sound like breaking. Glass, your entire species has perhaps 1,000 ships. We have brought 47 vessels, each more advanced than your best. Torres smiled grimly. Then you haven't been paying attention to our recent upgrades. At that moment, Jake placed both hands on the crystal and opened his mind to the Guardian's ancient intelligence. Light exploded through the chamber, racing up through the tunnels and out into space. Every human ship in the solar system suddenly blazed with new energy. Their engines grew quiet, but more powerful. Their weapons charged with forces that human science couldn't explain. Their hulls shimmered with protective fields that bent light around them. On the Coalition flagship, alarms began screaming. The human ships had just become something else entirely. Impossible, Ambassador Krell whispered, staring at the readings on his suit's display. Admiral Torres felt the change too. Something was different about everything around him. The air felt charged with possibility. I think, Torres said quietly, you should reconsider your position, Ambassador. In the crystal chamber, Jake opened his eyes. The Guardian was awake. No, not fully, but enough, and it was angry. The Devourers were stirring in the dark spaces between galaxies, and the Coalition was trying to stop humanity from preparing for what was coming. The real war, Jake said to Amy and Lisa, is about to begin. Captain Steve Rogers felt his ship come alive beneath his hands. The Eagle's Wing had been a good fighter before, fast and tough, but now it was something else entirely. The engines hummed with power he couldn't understand, and the weapon systems showed energy levels that should have been impossible. All pilots, this is Control. Admiral Torres' voice came through the radio. Coalition forces are demanding we surrender the artifact. They've threatened to take it by force. Steve looked out at the alien ships surrounding Earth's solar system. 47 vessels, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. 3 days ago, the sight would have terrified him. Now, sitting in his transformed fighter, he felt only calm confidence. What are your orders, sir? Steve asked. Show them what humans can do when we're properly motivated, Torres replied. Steve smiled and pushed his throttle forward. The Eagles. Wing shot toward the nearest Coalition cruiser like a bullet, but it moved without the usual roar of engines. Instead, it slid through space as quietly as a fish through water. On the Coalition flagship, sensors screamed warnings as the small human fighter approached. Captain Vextar, a Draknari commander with 30 years of experience, watched his screens with growing confusion. How fast is that ship moving? He asked his weapons officer. Impossible to determine, sir. Our sensors keep losing lock. Fire. Warning shots. Vextar ordered. Energy beams lanced out from the cruiser's weapons, but they passed right through the space where Steve's fighter should have been. The ship seemed to flicker in and out of existence, like it was only partially there. Steve flew between the energy beams as if they were standing still. The Guardian technology wasn't just making his ship faster. It was letting him move through dimensions that normal physics couldn't touch. He fired his own weapons, not to destroy, but to disable. Blue energy wrapped around the Coalition cruisers. Engines, and suddenly the massive ship couldn't move. What just happened? Captain Vextar demanded. Unknown, sir. Our engines are offline, but there's no damage. It's like they just stopped working. On Luna Base, Engineer Kate Wilson stared at her computer screens in amazement. Every human ship in the fleet was performing impossible maneuvers. They were moving faster than light without jump drives, passing through solid matter like ghosts. And their weapons were doing things that violated every law of physics she knew. How is this possible? She asked General Paul Anderson, who had arrived from Earth to oversee the crisis. The Guardian technology, Paul said, watching the displays. It's integrating with our systems, teaching them new rules. Kate pulled up, the technical data streaming from the fighters. These readings don't make sense. The ships are drawing power from ... nothing. Empty space itself. Not empty, came a voice from behind them. They turned to see Jake Morrison walking into the command center. His eyes were different now, glowing softly with the same blue light as the crystal. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made the air vibrate. Space is full of energy, Jake continued. The Guardian taught me to see it. Everything is connected. Matter, energy, time, thought. The coalition species never learned to use these connections because they were afraid of them. General Anderson stepped closer. Jake, are you still you? Jake smiled, and for a moment he looked completely human again. I'm still me, General. But I'm also more than I was. The Guardian isn't taking me over. It's showing me what humans could become. On the Coalition flagship, Ambassador Krell received an emergency transmission from the Galactic Core. The message was short and terrifying. Devourer signatures detected. In the outer rim, all ships return immediately. Krell's blue skin went pale. The Devourers were supposed to be extinct, destroyed by the Guardian millions of years ago. If they were returning, Captain Vexstar, he said urgently, we need to capture that artifact now. If the Devourers are truly returning, we'll need the Guardian's power to stop them. Our weapons can't lock onto the human ships, Vexstar replied. They're using some kind of phase technology. Then we use overwhelming force, Krell decided. Signal the fleet, all ships, open fire on the moon base. Force them to surrender. 46 Coalition cruisers turned their weapons toward Luna Base. Energy cannon and missile launchers charged with enough power to crack the moon in half. But before they could fire, something impossible happened. The sun went out. Not completely. It still burned at its core. But the light reaching Earth's solar system suddenly dimmed to a faint glow. In the darkness that followed, new lights appeared. Geometric patterns of energy stretched between the planets, connecting them in a web of power that pulsed like a heartbeat. The Guardian is fully awakening, Jake said, his voice now carrying the weight of ancient authority. It's turning our solar system into a fortress. The Coalition ships found themselves trapped in gravitational fields that shouldn't exist. Space itself bent around them, holding them in place while human fighters danced between dimensions. Admiral, Torres opened a channel to the Coalition fleet. Ambassador Krell, you wanted to see what humans were capable of. Are you satisfied? On the flagship, Krell stared at the impossible sight of a solar system transformed into a weapon. This was what the ancient records had warned about. The Guardian's power unleashed. You're making a mistake, he transmitted back. The Guardian destroyed entire civilizations last time it was active. It can't be controlled. Jake's voice came over the channel, but it was different now. It carried the weight of millions of years and the patience of something that had watched galaxies turn. The Guardian was never out of control, Jake said. It did what was necessary to protect life. Your ancestors' records are incomplete. They only show the battles, not the billions of lives saved. New images appeared on every screen in the Coalition. Fleet. They showed the Guardian's true history, not as a destroyer, but as a protector. It had evacuated entire worlds before the Devourers could consume them. It had shepherded refugee fleets to safety. It had fought not from hatred, but from love. A coalition has spent 300 years keeping humanity isolated, Jake continued. Not because we were dangerous, but because you were afraid of what? We represented change, growth, the possibility that the galaxy could be better than it was. Captain Steve Rogers brought his fighter alongside the coalition flagship. Through the viewports, Ambassador Krell could see the human pilot clearly. He looked completely normal, just a young man doing his job. But his ship was wrapped in energy that made reality bend around it. The Devourers are returning, Jake's voice continued. The Guardian can feel them stirring in the dark spaces between galaxies. They're stronger now, more dangerous than before. And this time, the Guardian won't fight them alone. What do you mean? Krell asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Humanity is the Guardian's weapon, Jake said. Not in the way you think, not as slaves or tools. We're its partners. The Guardian will teach us, guide us, give us power. But the choices will always be ours. General Anderson looked at the displays, showing coalition ships held helpless by forces they couldn't understand. What happens now? Jake turned to him, and his eyes held depths that seemed to stretch across the universe. Now we prepare for war, the real war. The Devourers won't make the same mistakes they made before. They've been waiting, learning, growing stronger. When they come, they'll try to unmake reality itself. And we can stop them? Anderson asked. Jake smiled, and for a moment the ancient weight lifted from his voice. We're human, General. We don't know how to quit. In the space between galaxies, something vast and hungry stirred. The Guardian's awakening had been felt across the cosmos, and old enemies remembered old hungers. They began to move, flowing through the darkness like a tide of extinction. The galaxy would soon learn what humanity was truly capable of. Ambassador, Krell looked at the readings from his sensors and felt fear settle deep in his bones. The human ships weren't just using advanced technology. They were rewriting the rules of physics themselves. Stand down all weapons, he ordered quietly. Send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them the Guardian has awakened, and humanity is its voice. In the crystal chamber beneath Luna's surface, the Guardian's intelligence reached out across space and time, touching the minds of every human in the solar system. It shared its knowledge freely, not as a master to servants, but as a parent. To children who had finally grown up. The age of humanity's isolation was over. The age of the new Guardians had begun. Dr. Matt Johnson never believed in monsters until the day Zephyria died. He was working in his lab on Luna Base when the emergency broadcasts began. At first, the reports made no sense. An entire star system had simply vanished from long range. Sensors, not destroyed, gone, as if it had never existed. That's impossible, Matt said, checking the readings again. Zephyria was the Coalition's second largest world, home to 12 billion people. You couldn't just erase something that big. But the sensor data didn't lie. Where Zephyria's star had burned for millions of years, there was now empty space. Not black space filled with debris, but actual nothingness. A hole in reality itself. Captain Lara Davis stood in the command center of Earth's newest ship, the Defiance. Like all human vessels, it had been transformed by Guardian technology. Its hull shimmered with energy fields that existed in multiple dimensions, and its weapons could strike targets that weren't entirely in normal space. How many ships are we losing? She asked her communications officer. Coalition fleets are reporting total losses wherever these things appear, came the reply. 17 systems have gone dark in the past 6 hours. Lavra had fought pirates and rebels during her 15 years in Earth's defense force, but this was different. The enemy wasn't trying to conquer or control. They were simply unmaking everything they touched. On Earth, President Helen Clark stood before the emergency session of humanity's governing council. Through the windows of the assembly hall, she could see the geometric patterns of light that now connected Earth to its moon and the other planets. The Guardian had turned their solar system into a fortress, but would it be enough? The Galactic Coalition is in full retreat, she told the assembled leaders. Their fleets can't even slow these things down. Every ship that engages them simply stops existing. What are we dealing with exactly? Asked Senator Tom Davis. The answer came from Jake Morrison, who appeared as a hologram in the center of the room. His body was still on Luna Base, connected to the Guardian crystal, but his consciousness could now project itself anywhere in the solar system. The Devourers, Jake said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the air vibrate. They've evolved during their millions of years in hiding. They're no longer just consuming matter and energy. They're unmaking the fundamental structure of reality. President Clark felt a chill run down her spine. Can we fight them? We're the only ones who can, Jake replied. The Guardian technology doesn't just give us advanced weapons. It lets us exist partially outside normal reality. We can touch the same dimensions the Devourers use. Sergeant Tony Miller led his Marine unit through the transformed corridors of Luna Base. The Guardian's influence had changed everything. Walls that were once simple metal now pulsed with energy, and doorways sometimes led to rooms that were bigger inside than out. This is weird, Private Lisa Chun muttered, looking at a wall that seemed to stretch away into infinity. Weird keeps us alive, Tony replied. He had learned not to question the impossible things happening around them. The Guardian's gifts came with their own logic. Even if humans couldn't always understand it. His radio crackled with an emergency signal. All units to the main hangar. We have incoming hostiles. Tony ran through corridors that bent space around him, arriving at the hangar in half the time it should have taken. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see something that made his blood freeze. Devourers had found them. They didn't look like ships or creatures or anything that belonged in normal space. They were holes in reality, patches of absolute nothingness that moved with purpose and hunger. Where they passed, stars flickered and died. Planets simply ceased to exist. How many? Tony asked the base commander. Sensors can't get an accurate count, Commander Alex Turner replied. They exist in too many dimensions at once. Could be dozens, could be thousands. Captain Laver Davis received the same reports aboard the Defiance. The Devourer swarm was moving toward Earth's solar system like a tide of extinction. Coalition. Ships that tried to intercept them vanished without even sending distress signals. All Guardian ships, this is Defiance, Lara transmitted to the human fleet. We're moving to intercept. Remember your training. Don't think like you're in normal space. The human fleet numbered only 50 ships, tiny compared to the Coalition armadas that had already been destroyed. But each vessel pulsed with Guardian technology that let them exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Steve Rogers flew point in his transformed fighter. The Eagle's wing no longer looked like a normal ship. Its hull shifted between solid matter and pure energy, and its weapons charged with forces that could unmake atoms. I have visual on the enemy, he reported. What he saw nearly made him lose control of his ship. The Devourers weren't just approaching. They were rewriting space. Around them, stars aged and died in seconds. Planets unraveled like balls of yarn. The very geometry of the universe bent and twisted in their wake. All ships engage, Lavra ordered. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships phased in and out of dimensions, striking at enemies that existed partially outside reality. Guardian weapons didn't just destroy. Devourer vessels, they erased them completely, sending them back to the nothingness they came from. But for every Devourer destroyed, 3 more appeared. They were learning, adapting, becoming stronger with each passing moment. On Luna Base, Jake felt the battle through the Guardian's ancient senses. The crystal chamber around him pulsed with energy as he channeled power to the human fleet. "We're not winning," he said to Dr. Amy Brooks, who had stayed to help coordinate the defense. "What do we need?" Amy asked. Jake closed his eyes and let the Guardian's knowledge flow through him. Images flashed in his mind, possible futures, tactical options, the true scope of what they were facing. "More ships," he said finally. "And more Guardians." "We don't have more ships," Amy pointed out. "No," Jake agreed, "but we have something better. We have volunteers." Across Earth's solar system, the Guardian's call went out. Not a demand or an order, but an invitation. Anyone willing to bond with Guardian technology could join the fight. The transformation would change them forever, making them something beyond normal humanity. But it was the only way to match the Devourer's power. The response was immediate. Thousands of humans volunteered, pilots, engineers, Marines, even civilians who had never fired a weapon. They came to Luna Base in waves, ready to undergo the transformation that would make them into living weapons. Tony Miller was among the first to volunteer. He stood in the crystal chamber as Jake placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling Guardian energy flow into his body. The change was overwhelming. His senses expanded to perceive dimensions that had no names, and his body became a conduit for forces that could reshape reality. "How do you feel?" Jake asked. Tony flexed his hands and watched energy crackle between his fingers. "Different, but still me. That's the point," Jake said. "The Guardian doesn't want to replace us. It wants to help us become what we're meant to be." Within hours, the transformed humans were in space, their bodies encased in energy fields that let them survive without ships. They moved through the void like living stars, wielding weapons made of pure thought and will. The second wave of the battle was even more desperate than the first. The Devourers had called for reinforcements from the spaces between galaxies. Reality itself was becoming unstable as two forces that existed outside normal physics clashed. Captain Lavra Davis watched her tactical display with growing concern. They were holding the line, but barely. For every Devourer destroyed, more kept coming. "Jake," she transmitted to Luna Base, "we need the big guns." Jake nodded, though she couldn't see him. He had been hoping to avoid this, but there was no choice left. "Guardian," he said to the crystal, "it's time." The response shook the entire solar system. The sun blazed with new fire as the Guardian's full power awakened. The planets themselves became weapons, launching beams of energy that could cut through dimensions. Space folded and twisted as the ancient intelligence showed its true capabilities. The Devourer's advance stopped for the first time in millions of years. But in the dark spaces beyond the galaxy, something vast and terrible felt the Guardian's awakening. The Devourer Queen, oldest and most powerful of her kind, stirred from her eons-long slumber. The real battle was about to begin. President Clark watched the reports streaming in from across the galaxy. Wherever human Guardian ships appeared, the Devourer advance slowed. Humanity was making a difference. "How long can we keep this up?" she asked Jake's hologram. "As long as we have to," Jake replied. "That's what humans do. We don't give up." But privately, he knew the truth. The Guardian's power was vast, but it wasn't infinite. And the Devourers were just getting started. In the space between galaxies, ancient hatred stirred. The Queen remembered the Guardian, remembered the pain of defeat. This time would be different. This time she would unmake everything. The Devourer Queen came to the galaxy like a wound in reality itself. Commander Alex Turner watched from Luna Base as sensors registered something that shouldn't exist. It was larger than most space stations, but it had no solid form. Instead, It was a moving void that consumed light, matter, and even the empty space around it. How big is it? President Helen Clark asked from Earth. Size doesn't apply, Jake Morrison replied, his consciousness now spread across multiple dimensions. It exists in spaces, between spaces. It's not just big, it's everywhere and nowhere at once. The Queen's arrival changed everything. Where? The smaller devourers had simply erased things from existence. She began unmaking the basic rules that held reality together. Stars didn't just die, they forgot how to shine. Planets didn't explode. They decided they had never existed.